All right, welcome everybody to Every Second Matters. So each month, on the second day of the month, since late 2013, there's been an effort to talk about what our Second Amendment protects. Call it Every Second Matters, and that's what we're doing. So thanks to everybody who's showing up for the live portion of the show. We record it live. And right now I'm only sending it out to YouTube this month, but we've experimented with other platforms in the past. Next month, we'll be sending it out over Odyssey, streaming it live to Odyssey and YouTube. And for anybody that's watching this after the fact, feel free to use the comments to continue on the conversations or the topics that we're talking about tonight. We send out links. I send out links to a bunch of people in the Second Amendment realm, people that are doing things, or people that are doing things in the Second Amendment. I kind of changed up the list this month, so we might see some different people in this month. Kind of quit sending it to some of the people that never showed up consistently, and send out to the link out to a couple other people this month. Without getting too much into the history of Every Second Matters, you can go back to other chats, and I'm sure I explain it. We've done this for a long, long time. I'm sure I've explained it in the past, more in depth. But we do have a bunch of people showing up for the live conversation here this month. And I have a poll out there using the poll feature of the YouTube this month to let people offer some feedback onto what they'd like us to talk about. And feel free to use the poll. We'll address that in a bit. And then ask people if they had any questions or topics they'd like to talk about to put them in the comments. Since Maggie's been doing that, other people might or may have. I'm not sure. There are a lot of comments out there. So let's dig in. We've got, like I say, links out to a bunch of people. We'll see who all shows up. I know I've been just doing some stuff around here, and I know I've heard people jump in and out of the room. But when I got back over here, DJ was in. So I don't know if you've jumped in more than once waiting for the show to start up.
I had. I was out there once and said hello. I think to Smeggy was out there, and the Kingpin was as well.
Right on. And then Rob jumped in. Thanks for joining.
Hey guys, how's you doing?
Right Midland. So unless y'all have topics to bring up that we can start with, I can start jumping into some that Smeggy suggested out here.
I do see that Smeggy's got a couple of good ones out there, including my home state of Nebraska, and that might have been the last one that he brought up. Oh no, he's got several others out there. Yeah, it looks like Smeggy is taking care of some of the topics for us today.
Something I've been thinking about is trying something. Let's try this if you're game. And maybe I'll wait till a little bit till we'll see what kind of people show up. Usually these live things, I don't know if I did this well or not because I scheduled this more than a week ago. And when you do that, it gets buried in YouTube's announcement or whatever that's called, like alerts. So people may or may not be getting alerts. I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. So we'll see if people start to get some alerts, and if they start to show up and we get more people out there, then I've got an idea, and that is to, I don't know if we should do it at the start of the show or at some time during the show, go through the states, just literally go through the list of states, alphabetically probably, and then just address anything to me that might be going on, stuff that's good, bad, or a lot of them probably not much is going on. But, you know, I've always had this idea of having like a scoreboard or something, and as a way to try to address that or try to keep track without skipping anything or missing anything that one might be under the radar, like one of the rallies or something that doesn't get a lot of attention. I didn't see hardly anybody talking about like the Iowa rally, for example. Where the Georgia rally is getting all kinds of attention because they're doing it today, March 2nd. They're marching for the 2nd on the 2nd, right? So so that we don't forget anything, and then also we don't overlook any of the victories, because a lot of the victories, especially the little nibbles on our side, don't get observed or appreciated. But with that being said, I don't have time or really the ability to go out and research that every month, let alone ever. So I think that's way better done or accomplished through group participation or like collaboration. Obviously, if 50 people showed up and knew what was going on in their states, doing something like that could be really effective. But expecting 2 or 3 people to do it for all the states is over. I think that's expecting too much. But anyway, I'll shut up. I've been talking for a while. What do you guys think about those, or any of the stuff feedback in with what's going on out there?
Well, gee, I definitely think that the state by state thing would be interesting. But that final point that you made, that the research and keeping a pulse on every state would be a little overwhelming for just 1, 2, or even 3 people. So, like the representatives thing, do we know enough people to have maybe a solid section, 10 or 15 states that could report in, sort of thing? Perhaps.
I don't know. I guess, like I say, if you start doing something like that, maybe people start joining in. But we almost had it once, but we never quite accomplished it. But I think it could be possible. I don't know of anybody else that's doing it. I don't really like repeating effort. If somebody else is already doing it, I'd rather just follow what they're doing.
Yeah, possible, most definitely. It's the probability thing. Actually, we could probably locate somebody from every state, but to have them reporting in each time might be a might be a challenge. And I'm down with that idea. Most def. That's a great way to go about in Every Second Matters broadcast, checking in, giving some reportage of what's going on in other states, staying informed, being able to network even is a good thing. And maybe even by region. I'm not quite sure.
All right, well, Smeggy starting off here with Alabama credit cards to the floor. I guess they're throwing their credit cards on the floor. So we're talking about, or is that concealed carry went to the floor, or passes the floor? I think is what happened in Alabama.
Alabama is definitely in the running, and that's concealed carry, the constitutional carry, I should have said, for CC. Alabama, Nebraska's in on that as well. I have heard that Alabama is pretty damn close. I don't know what it would have been today or not. So if there's anybody out there that knows actually what was going down in their legislature, that'd be nice to know. A little bit of an update from the Bama folks.
I went into the internet and it says bill advances to allow concealed handguns without permit. So this is as of 5:30 today. Alabama lawmakers, Alabama representatives advanced legislation Wednesday that would end the requirement for a person. So Senate Judiciary Committee approved the bill, which now moves to the Senate. So it just incrementally moved. The committee approved it, it goes to the Senate is the gist of it, it sounds like.
And then after that, should it pass, hopefully, that's a governor's signature kind of thing. And then it becomes, I'm not familiar with every other state and not a lot about my own state when it comes to those sort of things. So
yeah,
is it advanced?
Through tons of extra blah, blah, blah here, just so that they have places to poke ads in. And it's given all kinds of opinion and whatnot, but it doesn't really get to, like, if it's already, it doesn't even get to it at all. It literally doesn't even talk about it. It just talks about a bunch of people's opinions about it, but it just says lawmakers advance legislation, Senate committee now moves to the Senate. Literally everything else after that doesn't help you at all. So it doesn't really give you any news. It's just an opinion piece. What is this from? I don't know what this is, BND. So it's some kind of fake news site, but basically it just offers a bunch of opinion, but nothing about like if it goes to the House next, or if it goes to the governor next, or if the governor's been saying they are going to or not going to.
Well, hopefully it just advances clean and clear all the way through. And I will say that if any state that gets constitutional carry passed, big kudos, a huge round of applause. And I guess I will take my head and sink it a little bit lower that Nebraska wasn't 22 in 22. But, one thing, because one thing I'd like to point out is just with these few states that have bills that are close, they're advancing. Each one has been advancing. Nothing has been tossed completely out of this small group of states that we're looking at right now, Alabama, Nebraska, and others. And that is that we're going to reach, I'm confident we're going to reach that point, the midpoint of how many states we have. So once we get 25, 26, then in previous conversations, we've talked about how that's probably a good point to turn the tide. that the ones that other states that are just considering at this point, or it's not coming up on their agenda until the next legislative session, I like the advance. I like the lean and the power that's behind states getting us past that simple midpoint of 50.
So I'm reading this thing from MSN that I don't know if MSN even does news or if it's just reporting from this other place, AL.com, which I think is Alabama. So it says, this is from Sunday, by supporting constitutional carry, are Alabama Republicans defunding the police? Question mark. And then it goes on to say that in the past 2 weeks, defund the police has surfaced in the debate over the fate of permitless carry. It says that this article says that financial hit to the agencies also loom over the debate, even if it's a backseat to other safety concerns, doing away with the provision requiring gun owners to purchase a permit if they conceal or carry in their vehicle. Alabama. So I guess what they're suggesting is that if people have constitutional carry, then they won't get a permit, and then because they don't get a permit, departments and stuff that get paid by those permit fees will lose money. And then by having permitless carry or constitutional carry, you're defunding the police.
You know, that's kind of like to me, that's a backdoor whiny kind of thing. I mean, I don't know what the funds that would be generated would be, but departments suffer from cuts, budgetary cuts, restraints, those kind of things. It seems like every agency will have its hand out and never feel like they have enough. But it'd be interesting to find out how many permits that would be, what the cost is, and then actually have some of those numbers to toss back up against it. Because otherwise it seems like somebody has been, like those agencies have been asked, is this an issue? And they've just raised their hand. And the other thing is, like, at least in that report, that is the presumption that that's part of that. Yeah, I'd like to know more about that, certainly. Not a good sign, though, that they're trying, that those who may report such are trying to tie those two things together, because one is barely related to the other.
Says that permit revenue generates around $250,000 in any given year for Jones agencies. I guess that means the agencies that they're talking about. While the most doesn't pay salaries, it does support ongoing training and education, technology upgrades, and equipment like bulletproof vests. In Baldwin County, blah, 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 says the permit fees generate $600,000 to $650,000 per year. So.
Okay, so that's huge, actually. At least those are big numbers. I don't know what percentage that would represent.
In one county in Alabama, the concealed carry permits generate $250,000. I mean, that seems like a lot of money. And then there's a county nearby that's Baldwin County, Alabama. Let's go take a look at Baldwin County, Alabama, and see how many people even live there. I mean, maybe it's got a town in it or something.
Because you're talking about counties.
The population is 231,000. So are you telling me that every single person in Baldwin County got a $3 permit? Or holy crap, that would be, I don't know, how much is the permit? Like $30, $20, whatever, $50? Then that would be like most of the county has a permit. And then they're also not going to get a permit once there's constitutional carry. And then what's going on in that county? The cops need $600,000 for training for 200,000 people.
Well, I jumped out and on my other handset and found at least one piece. Jackson County, from the Jackson County Sheriff's org website, the fee for obtaining a pistol permit is $15 per year. So that's The wording on that, the fee for obtaining a pistol permit. I'm wondering if that is because some states will have that you need to apply and pay a fee in order to then apply to receive that permit. I'm going to do a little bit more digging on that. I'm not sure I'll be able to turn up much, but I'll look, G.
All right, well, that's Alabama for you. I can't even, it's down by Mobile. So maybe if they have to deal with like some kind of stuff coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, maybe that's why that county has to spend so much money on training. But they're
interesting.
right there between Mississippi and Florida, where they almost touch. Alabama just like sticks a little finger down into the ocean, or the Gulf of Mexico, I guess. That's where this county is, right where Florida, like where Alabama wraps around Florida and touches the Gulf of Mexico. That's where this county is.
Some more numbers. Oh, pardon me. Some more numbers to enter. As of July 6, 2021, grabbing some network news there. It's saying Governor Kay Ivey signed into law their something that allows lifetime concealed carry permit fees. And it goes on to say that instead of paying up to $40 to renew, the lifetime permit is a one-time price of $300. And for those 60 or older, you get a break. It's half that at $150. So some of those numbers are just not kind of making sense, especially county to county. As you point out, with their population, that's like all members of the population at least a couple of bucks. I'm not sure how that's working. It kind of sounds, I don't know, not prepared to say that it's incorrect so much as that just doesn't smell right to me.
And they got 21 other states, and if this was an issue, then I would suspect one of the 21 other states would have complained or gone back and said, no, we got to get rid of this constitutional carry thing after all. It's so bad because we lost all this revenue. I don't see that happening, or I haven't heard of that happening.
And I go on, there's some more interesting information that I'm pulling here. I'm just going to tick off some of these things. Alabama concealed carry quick stats. They're a shall issue state. Permits are issued to residents only, 18 years of age, valid for 1 to 5 years, which is chosen by the applicant. Never heard of that kind of thing, nor have I heard of this. The next thing it goes on to say is $5 to $20 per year, depending on sheriff. So sheriff dependent fees, that's kind of interesting. And then it says that it's a 30-day processing time.
All right, well, I'm going to go to the next one then, which Smeggy recommended. Washington ghost gun ban going to governor. Is that one of the ones that they've given up fighting for? Or is that one that they're still fighting for? I know they're still fighting for a couple of them.
Yeah, there were several that were all joined up together in that. The magazine thing was another one. And I wish that Foss or one of the other Washingtonians was here to help us out with that. But
well, I've got SA's post up here. So there's, according to the last one, 10 days left. Keep calling and emailing the Washington State Democrats. Well, I don't know why it says Democrats shouldn't be able to. I would be thinking you'd call everybody. But anyway, the bills to focus on, and there's 3 of them here. There's State Senate Bill 5078, which is the magazine capacity ban. There's 2 House bills. One of them is 1630, which is where firearms are restricted. That one's like kind of a nibbling or a pushing down the slippery slope or soaping up the slippery slope of firearms being marginalized, gun owners being marginalized of where they carry. And then this last one, HB 1705, is concerning ghost guns. Massively deceptive on the summary. This prevents repairing at home, extremely financial burdens, biopic ethnic minorities, and women by forcing serialization of every single part of a firearm. This also forces undue pressure on preventing suicides by having all parts needed to be transferred via an FFL. So those are some interesting points against it right in the little summary there. But according to this, there's 10 days left as of yesterday. And so I'm guessing that means that since these bills are moving around, they're not final. So, what did he say? Washington ghost gun ban going to the governor? I'm not sure. According to this, they're asking people to put pressure on the legislature for HB 1705, the ghost gun one.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Their ghost gun definitions, and it was in 2019 that they passed a law about ghost guns and untraceable firearms. So we'll go. If you don't mind, can I go straight into the ghost gun definitions for Washington State for you?
Sure.
Okay, so ghost is actually the term they're using is undetectable. So the definition in Washington of an undetectable firearm is any firearm that is not as detectable as 3.7 ounces of 17.4 pH stainless steel by a walk-through metal detector, or magnetometers commonly used at airports, or any firearm where the barrel, the slide or cylinder, or the frame or receiver of the firearm would not generate an image that accurately depicts the shape of the part when examined by those type of X-ray machines. So if the profile doesn't represent doesn't indicate what it is, I mean, right away I'm thinking, okay, so, polymer is going to show up different than steel. And also the fact that they have an ounce representation of those things, that's a really scientific definition of something, very specific definition of something. But I got to hazard a guess, that's probably not representative of even the best way to have that thing enforced, if that is the intention. If things are lighter than that, frames are made of different composite materials. Seems like they're going after something that is kind of ghosty. They're ghosting something out there to try and sorry. I'll go on with the untraceable firearms. Okay, so any means a firearm manufactured after July of 2019 that is not an antique, and it can't. And this is the important piece, that cannot be traced by law enforcement by means of a serial number affixed to the firearm by a federally licensed manufacturer or importer. So, and you have added to it that the FFL portion. So does this mean the end of CNR for Washington? There are so many things that this could affect. I'm just not quite sure. G, what do you think?
Well, I don't know how you come up with the end of CNR. CNR is an FFL, so anytime they touch anything, an FFL touched it.
Okay, thank you. That was I dropped that point.
Yep. CNR is 08, I think, or something like that. FFL. So I don't know. That's just, again, Washington is right for that. I guess they figured, well, we walked the other one through by just marketing. Let's market this one, and I guess they're leveraging or they're working off of the idea that most people aren't paying attention and just shop by the book, shop a book by its cover. So, hey, this bill says that it's pro good and anti bad. I'm down for that. Those are things I'm pro bad, good, and anti bad also, right? So, people are going to vote for it. But yeah, there's no way to make any sense of that. That's, I guess, like say, relying on people's unawareness or like inexperience with all the other things that includes, because that's a ton. That's like everything, it's like
yes,
black powder, kit at the store that you're going to assemble, kind of thing, probably.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'll go ahead and toss a little bit more on this because this is an interesting feature of Washington's law. So to go on, Washingtonians may not manufacture, own, buy, sell, loan, furnish, transport, or possess anything by that definition. Check this out. Or any part designed and intended solely and exclusively for use in an undetectable firearm. SA was making that point. I don't know if it was his last broadcast on Foss's Overnight or if it was the previous one. But how do you determine intent? Intended solely and exclusively for use in an undetectable firearm. Well, if you have parts and your intention is to use them in more than one, or there are just so many exceptions there to the rule. I mean, is the idea there maybe behind it that they'll just wait for litigation to help cement that sort of thing? Because determining intention for a piece of metal, good luck. Thanks. Good luck. And I think I'll go on here, I guess. They also are kind of making it so that everybody gets hemmed up in any contact with this. Because in addition to all that, manufacture, own, buy, sell, whatever, also assembly or repair of any undetectable firearm. So then, suppose, I don't want to go into too many supposes there, but, the quick and dirty one there is, suppose you have something that by definition just gets in, you take it to a gunsmith for repair, and that person does anything to it, receives it, repairs it, any of those things. That's hemming up a lot of stuff. This one falls, a lot closer. This one mimics other, things that we're aware of. Manufacture and untraceable with the intent to sell it. So, that's one of those things where home manufacture, that's going to apply universally, sort of thing. And then the next point that this goes on to make is then any person who is prohibited. So the last 2 points of that, and that's from Gifford's Law Center, by the way. The last 2 points, those are something that, those are things that already exist. So they're not that big a deal. But the previous 2, the assembly, the manufacturer, working on things, owning it, any of that stuff, that's way too blanket.
No, I don't think it's no big deal, because whenever they add teeth to stuff, it makes it tougher to remove stuff, because it'll be like, oh, well, we could remove it here, but there's 2 other places where this is also, you're going to be we can remove this prohibition of it, but there's 2 other things that came along subsequent to this that also prohibit it. So yeah, we removed this, but now you got 2 other things you got to remove too. So we don't want to keep giving them like, oh, we already have that infringement, so go ahead and say, repeat that infringement, because there's no need to reinforce them. No need to appease them or to give them an inch. And I don't know if that's, I know you're reading the thing, but if that's at least my rebuttal to just the concept of oh, don't worry if it's just adding onto the pile, because we got too much debris on the pile already,
Yeah, I followed that. I did not mean to indicate that or to be dismissive about those last 2 things, only to compare the commonality and the reference to, federal law as well. So bumping down to the Washington thing, though, one of the things that it's occurring to me now, that if these kind of definitions are passed by states, then it could be that the next state decides to do the same thing. They just essentially grab the text or the intent of that portion of a piece of legislation, and then look at how that could be spreading one state to another. And so I don't want to go.
This is a garbage one to even have on the books anywhere, because nothing happens with these kind of guns. So now they put up a law that says, oh, you can't use these guns, just like it was going to happen. Nothing happens, and then they go, oh, look, our law prevented things. I'm like, no, it didn't. Your law didn't do anything. It just said, don't jump up in the air into the sky and hit the moon with your head.
Right.
Okay, well, no one's doing that, so your law didn't stop people from doing that. Physics and things stop people from doing that.
Agreed. I'm right there with that.
But that's, one of my fears too, is they're going to create this anti-precedent. I'm going to go down to, I think, what Smeggy's following up. It's hard because we're way behind in things. But it says they can try to get him to veto, but it's a done deal. Last night, the Washington Senate passed a pair of anti-guns, the 1705 and that 1630. The definition of ghost gun they are talking about. In the definition, they're talking about home belts. I'm not sure what that is. You're reading the old definition, I guess. Maybe that's what you're saying. Prohibits individuals from possessing unregulated, currently legal firearms that don't have serial numbers. This bill would make lawfully built firearms retroactively illegal if built after 2019. So that's weird. But they already have some things that you would think are unreasonable, like making 1022s assault rifles. That happens.
Isn't that ex post facto? How can they go back and make it illegal from 2019?
That's what I'm saying. I just don't get some of this stuff. It's like, I don't know what they call that. What do they call that when they shoot for the sky with some of these laws, and then, oh, we got it. It doesn't actually, can't be applied, or it's totally illegal. I don't know. I think there's something. I don't know what the terms of all this. I'm not a lawyer or anything. I don't follow this stuff enough, but something like they don't have to check the legality of something before they present it. It's just, they wait until after it's voted in or not that they decide whether or not to do an investigation to see if it's even a real law or can be a real law, like it's a legal thing. I don't know if that's precedent, or if like it's the way that they actually do it. Like it might cost too much to check everything first because there's so many things presented, or they just assume everybody already did. And anyway, so like what you kind of talked about earlier, these things get copied and pasted and taken to other states. That's what happened in Nevada, from what I understand. They literally voted it in because they marketed it in as pro good and anti bad. So vote for it, right? And then everybody voted for it, and then they figured out, oh, these idiots like literally copied and pasted it from Washington, and it doesn't even work here. Like that, you can't. This isn't a working law in Nevada. It's like I don't. The Attorney General said you can vote for it all you want, but you can't enforce this law. There's nothing to do, so I'm not going to enforce this law. So I don't know if that's something like if there's like they're just going to throw stuff out there. It doesn't even have to be legal, and then it's up to the taxpayer to to figure it out, to tie, wrap it all up, or to figure it out and have to, I don't know, or if we're just supposed to sick with the burden of a bad law. I can't think of too many of them. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that, but you know what I'm saying? It's not like they throw bad laws out there and we live with them for years until someone challenges it. Usually there's a challenge right away, I think. But yeah, I don't know how you would, well, was there something like that with the bump stocks when they basically told everybody who owned a bump stock, you got to go throw it away, return it in or something?
Yeah, I think the
kind of thing. This is existing property that now all of a sudden we're telling you how you can live your life and what you can own or whatever.
And I do think that the reference, back to the 2019, I think that's referring back to the previous legislation that did go in 2019. This is like a sort of a further definition or redefinition, so to speak, of these things. And Smeggy's absolutely right. This is to target things like home builds. This is for, and G and others. I wonder if this isn't part of a thing where they're stumbling to address polymer. They're stumbling to address these things that they don't have contact with. I mean, people who are hip to the conversation know that you can build your own stuff, and the rules and regulations following that. Well, people who aren't familiar with that, and I'm not saying that I am at all, but at least the concept is there, that I get it. I know that it's legal. I know that it's referential to the Second Amendment. I know that it's something that we can and we may do. So it kind of seems like they're stabbing in the dark at something that they barely understand and just going wholesale, like, nope, everything now. Instead of trying to figure it out, understand how a better definition could be made in order to have something that is more effective legislatively. I'm not quite sure about that. What do you think?
Well, that's what I think I was saying, shooting at the stars. Like, let's just make everything illegal and see what the people think. All right, so I guess
I did want to say that the definition and the things that I was reading from Giffords, that they were updated in January, but that was an article originally from September of 2019. So I apologize for any differences in that. I'm going to go grab the NRA-IL website. If we're advancing past Washington, I'll at least have that good to go to look up some stuff for the other states we're going to talk about.
Gifford sucks butts, by the way.
Yeah, I just went straight there.
So then this next one is Ohio constitutional carry, House floor passed, Senate. I don't know what he means by that, but basically it's on to the governor, I believe. So their House bill passed the Senate committee. Is that what we figured out? And now is going to the floor? Or is that, no, that was Alabama. So I don't know. Tupper was talking about this one yesterday, I think, or was it earlier today? But I think he said it was going on to the governor. So it'll be a race between Alabama and Ohio at this point. Now, just throwing it in there, Georgia is having their 2A rally thing today, and that might motivate their representatives to vote on their constitutional carry push. Don't they have constitutional carry push?
I believe so. Where is that rally? What city?
I'm looking. 2 days ago, Georgia Senate passed this bill for constitutional carry. Let's see. So going back to Instagram is probably the fastest place for me to find that thing about Georgia. Oh, where did I put it? I thought I put it somewhere. Oh, I put it on YouTube. You want to catch us up on anything? Because we were all over the place on your comments there.
To be honest, I'd have to go back and look at the comments. I was just basically just typing them in as I was finding them. So instead, I will give a piece of advice to the listeners or whoever cares, is the way I find out about all these different bills that are like passing the Senate or going to governors, blah, 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 whatever, is either the FPC Take Action page or the NLA or NRA ILA Take Action page. And they're pretty good at having like the most current stuff each step of the way. So you just go through the first couple pages, figure out what's happened the past month. That way I can do research. And while I'm there, click the button, type in a little thing to email, and, you know, at least get your voice heard. I know form letters aren't 100% the best. If it's something super important, I'll take the time to completely write my own.
No,
But
that's a
I
great
like
idea. It's a great idea.
Yeah. So that's what I try to do every second, is go through like a legislative update, which I know I haven't filmed one of those videos in a while. I need to get back to doing that. But while I'm researching for it, I go ahead and take action on everything that's still, you know, going on. And I did just want to clarify with the whole ghost gun thing. Like what I was saying when I was like, that's the old definition, is, you know, DJ started talking about like the undetectable firearms as being like the definition of ghost guns. But the current definition, like what they're talking about now, they're talking about home builds. Every time they say ghost guns, they mean home build stuff. And that's what that bill says. It's banning like components that could be used to make unserialized guns, I guess 80%ers, or maybe even like uppers for an AR. It's like, well, technically if you have the untraceable lower, then that upper is a part of an untraceable, where normally you'd be able to buy that no problem. So that one passed like all the Senate and the House and is going to the governor. Then the magazine ones, I think, are still being voted on, whichever, in the floor of the House or Senate. I'm not sure which one.
So, Smiggy, is it your understanding then that like material with and the intent thing, is it one of those deals that we talked about in the past where, well, this material, you know, that I think G has even used that piece of cheese, like that chunk of cheese could be used as this. Is that part of the understanding that you have of that, the undetectable, untraceables, and home builds for Washington?
I don't know if they actually do that. I think like by letter of law, like technically, like a solid block of metal would count.
Yeah.
But we all know like what they mean. If you read between the lines, like they're talking about 80%ers, and then someone's going to come out with a 50%er, and then they'll decide, well, those also count. And then, well, this person's doing a 3D print, so now that counts. And, you know, we all know the slippery slope type stuff. But I would be more worried about the regular, like an AR-15 upper or a bolt carrier group or a trigger for a Glock. Technically, if you had an unserialized lower, all of those parts could be part of an unserialized gun. Even if you have like two, right? You have one regular one that's just has a serial number you bought at a store. You have a couple uppers for it. As soon as you get an 80%er, now those uppers have become accessories to the 80%er, not to the regular one.
Yeah, like as an after the fact kind of thing. That's disgusting. Go ahead.
Well, they write it on purpose vague enough that it's basically, if they want to screw you, they have these 10 different things they can throw at you, and maybe you'll plead down to only one charge. I mean, they like doing that, right? They catch someone for one thing, might actually be breaking the law, you know, selling drugs or something, but then we're going to throw 50 charges at you so that you plead a couple of them, and that makes everything easier, even though the 48 of those charges are complete BS. Because it's just intent, blah, 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 whatever. Like, you can't prove intent. That's so messed up.
Well, and you're right, and the vagueness of that, and as you're pointing out, the intentional vagueness, leads to things like the plea deals that you iterate there. I don't like. I don't want it to be the kind of thing where legal precedent begins to become set based on these kind of things. Because again, and both you guys have used the term slippery slope. Yeah, that slides right down into, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be negative about it, but and I don't want to use the word fear, but I have concern that if those sort of precedents are set in states like Washington and others, then it not only makes it easier for other states to do so, but it gets us even farther away from just removing NFA. Interesting.
Well, it's interesting you should bring that up, NFA, because that was something else that I heard, and I don't remember like what number bills they were. I don't know, they probably won't even pass, but they've recently introduced, there was one bill that is trying to take SBRs and SBSs off of the NFA. And that would be cool. Well, then, as like a complementary bill to that, this other dude introduced getting rid of AOWs. Because the thought was, let's say for some reason it actually passes and they get rid of SBRs, the ATF will just start calling all of these, whatever, braced firearms, different things. They'll just start calling them AOWs so that they'll still be able to control. So if you get rid of both, then, you can have SBRs and you took away, like they're already thinking ahead. What's the ATF going to do? Because that they still want to regulate everything they can. So you take away their backup plan. Then we just need hearing protection gone, and NFA doesn't exist, well, other than firearms. Or full auto.
All right, so then we got to pause. The answer to the Ohio constitutional carry is that it passed the House and everything. So, oh no, it doesn't. Hold on. It passed the House thing. It now goes to the full Ohio thing. Oh, I read.
Yeah,
that.
I think it passed the full Senate, and then it passed the House committee.
Yeah.
So now it's full House and then governor.
Yeah, and then it says the governor's a D-bag, and he may not because he's wishy-washy on gun stuff. So that was Ohio. Then we get Nebraska.
Yeah.
To go to the floor. So what, are you just pulling all these things from the one website you were looking, or websites you're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm just basically kind of trying to summarize.
And sort of like how are those sites set up? Are they just like a list of posts and you're taking the most recent post to mean the most current activity, or are they listed like as like a sports update or like top 10 list of like these are the most important things right now?
Well, you can filter it on just if you only care about a specific state or federal, and then you can filter it by duration, the last month, the last week, the last year, and then they show up chronological order. So on this one, if I remember the headline right, basically the Nebraska constitutional carry, it passed like the subcommittee, but they don't want to bring it up to the floor. So the take action was basically write the people and tell them you want them to vote on it on the floor. So like they're trying to kind of just, if I don't vote on it, it goes away. Like they're just trying to hold it up. So that was the action, was to encourage them to take a full vote because it would probably pass and then hopefully go get signed.
And you know what, Smiggy, I think it's also, there's a potential for that being sort of a stall tactic as well, because the legislative session is going to end. And that's one of my concerns there, is that it'll just linger. The gavel will drop, they go into recess, and you have to wait for the next go around, and then who knows where it's going to go from there. I'm not trying to be negative.
Well, that's market research. That's market research for the antis and our side, even to know what's worth pushing for, what's the big, how active people are, how important things are to people.
Like in the Nebraska thing, Yeah, I'm here, and there are a couple of things that happen in this state. Our state has a Second Amendment searching for words. We already have, it's already established in our state constitution. There's what I was looking for. Our state constitution already provides for zero limitations on a whole laundry list of things. I mean, it's like 20 things that are part of what is written there. And it is so clear. The intent of that, at least to me and many others that I've spoken with, it is so clear. It is no, this is not restricted. This is not a problem. This is completely okay. And so you have this, preemption becomes a big issue here. And I live in a city, 2 of them in the state with a population greater than a couple 100,000. We cannot conceal carry. We have to go permitted for that. Or I'm sorry, open carry. We have to go permitted to go concealed carry. Anybody outside of these jurisdictions do not. To take it outside of this jurisdiction and out to the rest of the state where you can open carry with no penalty or concern is that the states that surround us already have constitutional. Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, South Dakota, Wyoming. I mean, everybody that we touch or come close to pretty much, we're the last person standing. I mean, you can hear it in my voice. I'm pretty disgusted by this. And by the way, that's Legislative Bill 773. The guy who introduced it, great person. And I think it does have a strong chance of being signed. It's going to take a minute, and maybe a minute too long for this legislative session.
Yeah, if it gets voted on. I mean, that's stall tactic. I don't understand how that can be allowed to be a thing. Like, oh, we didn't get it done in this time, so when we come back, whatever, in a month or however long their break is, we have to start all over again. Don't you wish you could do that at work? You have a deadline, so you have to do some report, and you don't get it done by Friday, so on Monday, you don't have to do it anymore? Well, I didn't finish it in time, so I don't have to do it. That'd be great. I'd stall on everything.
Yeah, and you know what, Smeggy? There's a component going back to Washington like that, because I have heard from Washingtonians that guys and gals that we're familiar with. These things are introduced every year for them, and it was with confidence that most people, at least the ones that I've spoken to, thought that this would not have a chance in Washington, because last year didn't work, the previous year didn't work, 5 years back. But it's that banging on the door. It's constantly banging on the door. Look what happens over the last 2 years. All kinds of upheaval, concern, all these things that are making people think about it again. And so now popular support is there for some of the restrictions. Uninformed support, I want to venture. Yeah, no bueno there, amigo.
Where did weird stuff happen? Portland? Or did it happen in Washington also? Was there stuff happening in Seattle?
Yeah, not as much as Portland. Portland's the one where they actually took over a couple blocks or whatever and had their tents out. But
none of that
Seattle definitely had a lot of unrest.
But none of that kind of thing not to that level or whatever.
They didn't take over a chunk like they did in Portland.
Okay, they're just scared because of what happened next door, or they're playing off of that fear.
Yeah, well, I mean, they could have. It's there was still the looting and burning and stuff, so they could still be worried about that kind of thing.
All right, did you have any other states? Because then go into federal SBR and stuff. Nobody else is throwing anything out. Oh, actually, hold on. Sinister is saying Cali is terrible with home built now, trying to move on to parts.
Yeah, and that's the thing where California wants to do. Oh, you're going to buy a buffer tube. Well, that's regulated. Oh, you need to get a background check to buy a barrel. You need a bolt carrier, trigger. They want to do every single part, treat it like it's a firearm all by itself.
Yeah, and if you apply any kind of common sense approach or understanding to that, the average person, if they're even Smeggy with what you just described, and then you ask the average person, so is that reasonable or responsible legislation? Does that make sense? It doesn't. I don't think that the common person is not going to agree with that probably at all once they understand what those things mean. Now, we understand, you say buffer tube. okay, might need to go with an analogy for somebody, and I hate having to do that, but that's the way we can increase understanding. So it's a bit like, I don't want to do it right now, but it's the kind of thing where I do not believe that the average person, the average citizen and voter would say that that's reasonable or responsible legislation. What do you think, Smeggy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for one, the analogy is pretty easy because the vast majority of people that are buying parts, they're not doing it to home build. They're doing it to upgrade something they already have. Like that is registered. That is like they went through the background check already. So the analogy is, you know, you buy your car. Okay, great. You got your permit, whatever, like your license plate. Now you want different rims, or you want to put the blue headlights in instead of the stock ones. Well, those headlights need a background check, or you need a driver's license to buy headlights or something. Like it's
or serialized.
Parts to upgrade their own thing or replace something that's broken, not to build completely.
You need a license plate for the car, but then you also need a license plate for those new headlights, and you need a license plate for that new tank of gas, and you need a license plate for the car seats you put in there, and you need a license plate, and then you got to start renewing the like it's just another foothold, another.
Don't give me any ideas.
I think the ideas are already there, though. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that Smeggy's keying in on, and using the automotive analogy. That's a good one, Smeg. I was going to go there too. I'm just reticent to do so. And the way that G helped to spin those parts, and like you need a license. It's licensure. It's registration. No way. Going back to my point that the average citizen is going to think that's cool. Just like no way. Unless they be completely naive.
Evil ghost gun, like manufacturing black market, whatever. It's like, no, dude. Like, I built my AR, not, so I bought the lower, so that did do the 4473 or whatever, and I built it piece by piece. And even that, building it piece by piece, I still have upgraded almost every part on it since then. I haven't swapped out the barrel and like the upper and lower receiver themselves. Everything else in my AR is different from what I built the first time because I changed my mind after the fact and wanted to upgrade.
Well, going backwards, another way to look at this, because you sound like a bunch of kids to them, and exactly what they expect when they have an opinion of gun owners as being greedy, violence-loving weirdos and stuff. And if our response to you can't have everything, you can only have some of it, which seems reasonable to them because they see all kinds of places where they're content with having limits. And if our only reaction is, no, we want it all, or how dare you take my property or whatever, that's the confrontation that they're expecting and they have with their children all the time. So that's what they're being set up to, be ready for. So as a way to not fall into that ambush or not play their game, to hack that would be another way to do it. I would think would be to look at it from the sense of what's your suggestion and then take it apart. So look, we don't agree on this, but your intent here is to take away my property at some cost and effort from the government. Let's take a look at what you really think you're going to get there. And is this going to accomplish anything, or are is this, what I'm saying? I'm just saying there's probably got to be, I know there is, but I don't know if I'm voicing it right, but there's got to be a way to look at it from addressing their position rather than how it affects us. Is that a way to wrap it up better? And just
you can point out how doing retroactively, policies like this is bad for everybody. Because they do it for something.
When we talk about red flag laws, one way to effectively stop them in their tracks is to go, look, are you here to save lives? Yes. Then how do you take away one dangerous item, creating even more tension, and then walk away like if you've just solved something? All you've done is aggravated the situation and not mitigated any of the root causes or whatever the saying is. So in this case, address them. Okay, so you wanted to say there's limits on firearms ownership. How does that mitigate any root cause of where the actual problems are? So not just how can you take away our property, or how can you affect a law that, affects this other law, which are the things that we've used historically to, as our standby challenges, changing the game a little bit and coming at it from where do you think this is the best way to do it, and how do you justify these things. Like, where's your, coming at it for them to justify? I'll shut up. I'm just repeat myself, I think.
So I'm wondering, some of this. I'm trying to think of other, other parts of the Constitution, other parts, what's in the bill in the Constitution that makes this kind of like a ridiculous thing. And again, I'm trying to source and pitch straight to the average citizen, because the knee-jerk responses out of things is defunding, violence, protest, all this other stuff. That just makes people want to do the knee-jerk reactions that are the same way that things like the Patriot Act passed. So I'm wondering now whether or not this begins to establish due process for states and for the federal government, so that it ends up being something that you cannot challenge through the 5th or the 14th Amendment. Like, that to me is just like, that's insanity. Because if that kind of thing were to become, and I'm not trying to go crazy tinfoil hat here at all.
What's going to affect the 14th Amendment?
No, property rights. So, okay, due process. That's where I started off with. So if these kind of things create the process, which is part of the definition of due process.
Hold on, these kind of things, are we talking about
serializations? Yeah,
okay.
Serializations, parts that are intended for use.
Parts to be guns. Okay.
Yeah, so just trying to think about our firearms as just the personal property aspect. Okay, no search and seizure without due process. So if these kind of things begin to establish the processes of due process, that means that they're going to be able to end run around things like the 5th and the 14th, which establish that no, these things cannot be done without due process. So if these precedents are set, these things become law, then that's the process that they're talking about. That makes it like even more likely, or I shouldn't say likely, more possible. Probability is for another discussion that can be done now.
I think I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Well, and that's kind of like where I'm saying too about going backwards, right? Like if they start saying, "Oh, it's cool to just retroactively make this illegal," like that's no big deal. Then where do they end there? Like,
yeah, and the whole. Go ahead.
We don't want you using 3G phones anymore because we can't track you good enough. So 5G enough.
And since this wouldn't be a civil, any of these infractions, that's not civil, that's criminal. And so what that does is that what that does is with 5th Amendment protections, I think it's like at least a grand jury, I think. And so suppose that those grand juries are booked, and those things begin to man, I don't want to spiral out into this negativity, because this is what this kind of thing is approaching what is one of my greater disgusts. I'm disgusted by the sort of thing that happens with these, and I'm going to refer back to the things I won't, because I need to shut up. But the fact that these things begin to establish the ability for rights to crumble and people not paying attention because they're focused on the hyper-focused hot issue. No average citizen, I'm going to project out here. I'm going to propose that no average citizen is going to want to deal with any kind of restrictions on any other forms of property. If we go back with Smeggy's analogy, and it begins to be, and we go with the cash for clunkers, whatever that program was, and how things get filtered out, petered out, reduced, removed, then I'm beginning to ramble. Somebody, I'm tossing out a line. Somebody saved me here.
Well, Clash for Clunkers worked though, and they killed off all them cars because people were like, okay, let's do that.
And unwitting, see, that's one of those things. Focused on the hot response there was, oh yeah, that's a good idea because of this, or hey, that's a bottom line check for $3,000 or whatever the hell it was. Not what that means to. Oh, so that's overreach. That's removing things from the stream of personal property. Now check this out. We got you to do it because we suggest to you that, hey, this is better for the environment. This is better for our future. This will make our country more independent. On fuels and transportation, things like that. What is it at the cost of? Oh, check that out. Now we just removed a whole class of things that we didn't want around. Now, apply that to firearms. Oh, well, hell, we don't want that stuff around. You know what? That concept is outdated. It's not an efficient means of whatever it is that it's supposed to be intended for, whatever the intended use is. I mean, you could have had a clunker sitting in your driveway and you decided to use it as yard art. So the application of those kind of things to firearms, all of a sudden, here, man, I don't like the negativity with some of the things I'm coming up with, but it is an extreme concern of mine.
No, I wouldn't be that concerned, because that would be a whole bunch of people that have no resistance or nobody standing in their way of just running whatever that is, running rampant through the laws or whatever. So they may want to do all that stuff, and they are able to in certain places, but they're not even able to suggest it in other places. So,
well, gee, okay. So how about this? Who is it that's saying, "Oh hell no"? I mean, it's us. We're saying, "Oh hell no." I don't know about the family.
Does one person say, "Oh hell no" once? No. Does one person say hell no for everybody else? No. Like, it's sort of, oh hell no is a reaction that is one of many reactions, and when it is done, when it is said by enough people at the right times, a consequence comes of it. But in the big picture, you're asking who's there to depend on. The concept of making sure everybody knows that they are the ones to depend on, right? And that when do you depend on everybody? Now, like all the time. So, what I'm saying? These things come in waves, maybe. Is that what I'm trying to say? So who's the one? Hell no. Like, at the time, it's whoever is there. And sometimes it's enough people and it's a lot of people, and other times it's very few. But as long as we don't forget that you can stand up and say hell no, then we've always got that option. As long as they haven't written the rules to say we can't, we still got that option. And I believe that conversations like this and just being aware and letting people know and being available, looking both backwards and forwards to just actually take time to focus on important stuff is, what gets it. And that's what Every Second Matters is all about. There's ebbs and flows, there's trends, there's fads, there's like attention and apathy, and consistency is what keeps the foundational elements through it when it's ignored or when it's overwhelmingly drowned out, right? But so who says hell no, or who says right now? Everybody and whoever and anyone, or hopefully not no one, but I wouldn't be too fatalistic. Think about if you mapped out constitutional carry, if you mapped out right to travel, if you mapped out who's carrying guns, if you mapped out number of FFLs, if you mapped out number of NFA items sold, if you mapped out all these things and put them literally on a map, and then you did that for every year, and you turn that into a flip book, would those dots be turning into a solid color in most of the countries, or would they be disappearing and turning into freckles and then a completely empty country with no firearms influence at all? You know what I'm saying? We're winning. It's just that we're not winning everywhere, and we get used to feasts. And when we have like times when the buffet isn't as nice, like we look around at each other like it's over. You know what I mean? Like, we're not starving.
I do. The feast or famine thing. I mean, I get that, and there's an urgency in my voice here, and there's a confusion and a frustration as well. So your words, well taken, and and thanks for that. Trying to increase the perspective here, trying to have any of us be so focused on not having a lack of vision or positivity. And I'm not forwarding that because I want everybody else to feel that way. But I'm in distress, and being in such a large section of the famine portion of that analogy, not digging it at all, because the feast has been everything. So many things based on misunderstanding or the reactionary responses. That's overwhelmingly more powerful. And so when I was saying,
talking about antis appealing to that kind of stuff and winning.
Yeah, the presence of that.
Okay, well, the fact that that's all they got to rely on tells us that they're lazy and they're willing to just phone it in. And the fact that we've got, literally, I could go on and on, you don't need me to. People that aren't aware of what I'm talking about, go check out Minuteman University, where we post all kinds of stuff about the organizations that are kicking butt. But we've got tons of organizations that are changing all that. And one of the reasons we're even seeing any of this, well, the only two reasons we see any of their push at all is because they need to make a couple of bucks and they got to appeal to the people that are making them a couple of bucks. But they've lost all interest in going after gun stuff and or gun owners and stuff. And that's because of those progress we're making in different areas, like not just a bunch of different areas. So it's just a matter of time, really, to see. I don't know. Like I say, if you're looking at just one focused in on one part of any chart, there's a down part of almost any chart. How many charts in reality only go up? So if you're looking at a down part of a chart that's like almost always up, I'm just saying zoom out a little bit or give it a minute, because then you'll be focused in on a complete upward for a while. Problem is, once people get focused in on that complete upward for a while, as soon as it plateaus or goes down, they freak out because they're not putting it in perspective. Or not just time, but with other things and that kind of thing. And then it's always when all the down stuff is always these couple of states, and those people, I don't even know. I've lived like that. I have lived like that, but it was before I was like aware or woke to the fact that we were living under infringements and stuff. But
it's confidence shaken. There's a portion of this, at least for me, and I know it's reflected in what others have told me, the confidence. Can't be confident in the things that already sometimes are on a precipitous trajectory or edge, where if when something falls. So not a dead horse here, but again, when I'm asking for who is saying hell no, it is the intention of that request is as strongly as the anti-rights folks are heard, understood, followed, help to precipitate change. While I will acknowledge completely, find great faith and comfort in what you have suggested as the we do this, we effort, it is our voices, it is the accumulation of those things, man. Maybe it's like I'm thinking back to where's our national organization? Where is that voice that is so strong that and it doesn't even have to be one giant bullhorn. I'm not talking about a klaxon that ends up muting any other voices. I just mean like consistently strong. Just looking at and all the ancillary reasons that there would be there for, like, say, media coverage. Like, that's something that almost all firearms people get. It's like, no, it isn't being covered in a way that's advantageous to us, and advantageous ends up applying to all their citizens because it's more realistic and it's more righteous. It goes back to constitutional guarantees. So there's I guess where I will leave it. I want that national voice. I love that we have these smaller voices. I love that we have medium sized, medium large, but where is the jumbo? Because I do believe that there was a jumbo voice, instead of us picking apart these things state by state. Hey, assemble your team, write your letters, NRA, ILA, do this over here. All the firearms rights and Second Amendment organizations and the like. It's just hanging out right there. It's not enough. Not that it's not enough because it doesn't achieve something. It just doesn't get up to the point where I really am. I desire that so strongly. Something that responds in the same way that the reactionaries, the other reactionary response is there, but more solid. One that shows, by illustrating, by providing the information and providing just the amplified voice. No, and here's why. Because the mom and pop, the Joe and Jane, the public, with a better understanding, infringements are not cool. People don't want those. They don't. It's a misunderstanding. That's what I'm going to suggest, and I'll stop there.
I think people do want infringements for other people and on things they don't like.
Agreed. And while I agree with that, then I'm going to forward right there. But if a dialogue exists where they come to understand the folly of their choices based on fallacy, so double F, folly and fallacy, right there. It's salacious. It is I mean, I sort of get your point there, man. I really do. I could go on about that, but yeah, not trying to do super rant. But yeah, people are going to be willing as a response to anything. And looking at the last 2 years, a lot of things. And I guess I'll go back
Yeah.
one more referential. I'll go back one more referential, and then I'll kick back to you. I apologize for it's called DJ, the long ramble, the great wind that blows, sort of thing. And that is right back to the Patriot Act. How did all of that get through? Because people were scared. They wanted an immediate response. They took confidence. I'm going to suggest that the American public took confidence in what was being offered by Father Government. Here's the protection. Here's the way we prevent this. Here's the way this doesn't happen again. And oh yeah, these other 1724, 937 things.
So they did all
you
that.
Also can't do.
And there was, we're all old enough to remember the whatever speculation, overreach, and that kind of stuff, and distrust, and people being upset. But it wasn't anywhere near enough people that were like, wow, let's get this done or whatever. Like, we need all this. And then that was a long time ago. What was that? 2001, I guess 2002 maybe. And then, or was it 2001? They didn't have all that before the end of the year, did they?
Without being sure, proceed.
Anyway, yeah. So, and then now they've had all of that time to live with it. Some people live their entire life under that. So we think of it as something that happened after college, like after we had kids, after we got divorced, right? Like it was just another thing in our giant lives. There's people that grew up just like we grew up under the NFA, or
Yes.
not NFA, the Gun Owners Protection Act garbage. Not that either. What am I trying to say? The GOA, that happened right before we were born, pretty much. So, that kind of stuff. We don't know what it's like to buy a gun without a 4473 because of that. But our parents lived half their lives not caring about that, and so that's a different slight, a different offense. And I don't know. I mean, I think there's it's different because when I grew up, I wasn't hanging out with people who had like distrust or displeasure, distaste with policy or government structure and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's always been people like that, but I just never hung out with them, or I didn't know nothing about all that, so I don't have much to compare it with. But the people that seem to be dissatisfied, and I don't want to say like in a way that's like gotta overthrow it or I want some other scheme of government, but more like, hey, let's take back the control here. Like, I understand how this works, and the people that are in the controls right now are assholes. Let's get them out of there. I see people that are able and willing to jump into places, and it's when do they do that? Usually you do it after stress. You don't know ahead of time. Nobody's got precognition. But when you got a bunch of people, the war on terror is ended. So that means there's a bunch of people who are sitting back home. That means there's a whole bunch of people that were supplying that industry that are looking for new means of income or strategies for success. And, I guess depending on your position, your perspective on that, that's a positive or a negative. But I see that as a bunch of able, again, interested, willing people that understand the system or down with the system and want to get rid of some of the exploiters. And I consider the exploiters people that went to college to be political strategists, went and worked on somebody's politician team or attorney general team or prosecutor team for a minute just to learn something, get a little bit of resume, and then for whatever reason were touched or deemed and then started running for political office and have been in political office since their 20s, and they're now old people with millions and millions and millions of dollars. And in that scenario, in that circumstance, that just doesn't keep happening and happening and happening. We live in giant trends and in fluctuations, or not fluctuations, but swings, pendulum swings. We go back and forth within a realm. And I don't want to say it's like binary necessarily, but we're within this scope or realm, and we're not going to just end. I don't think at all. I don't see any indication that we're just going to end. Instead, I think we're going to get a bunch of people that jump in there, take back the reins. And there's tons of ways. Holy moly, there's so many ways that we can eliminate the debt that those idiots got us into and get everything back on track. And instead of fighting all the different new options, work with new options. And, I don't think the only goal or like, I guess goal it would be to like be the owner of the world. We're just trying to, you know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of people that are just going to be content with being solid country in the world. And if you're not intent on dominating it and you're not as scared of it, then you're just a player in it. And we could easily be a player. And once we're a competent player, we lead the way again. We've been leading the way quite a bit all this time. And I guess I'll shut up. I've been rambling too. So I'll just throw that out there. I'll throw all of that out there.
It was a good rant, though.
So Rob, sorry, man. You know, it's one of these things where I am verbose as hell, set on maximum verbosity and ready to run and run and run. So kick into the conversation here, man. Don't mean to mute you so much by hogging the mic.
Dude, everybody mutes me. It's good because I talk too much most of the time, so it's all good. Yeah, I think we're going to an interesting phase. I think part of the problem is, I think voter apathies are always been kind of a problem, but it seems like we've lost American tradition. One of the unique things about American culture, as I see it, is gun culture is almost very uniquely American, and we've lost that. And I think ultimately losing that heritage is actually one of the things that I think defined us as Americans or made us different than how are we different than like Brazilians or English people, right? And part of that is the individualistic nature of being an American, but also the gun culture. I mean, if I had to say, tell me what's unique about American culture compared to English culture or Australian culture, and there's not a lot of things that we're not that different, right? But the gun culture is one of those things. And I think we've lost that. And I think that if we ever want to become united as a country, we need to have more things as a country in common than what we do now. And I think the fact that we've lost that is a problem, excuse me. Like I would say, I think especially over the last couple of years, you saw with like the BLM riots and everything else, where people were like saying they're getting triggered by an American flag. Now think about that. People get triggered by an American flag. Now I'm not like a flag worshiper kind of guy, right? I'm not like super rah-rah, go, you know, USA. I'm not one of those guys, but I'm proud to be an American. But I would say it's really disheartening when you think about the fact that Americans, or a lot of Americans, are like triggered by the symbol of our country. And to me, that's emblematic of a very, very deep problem that I don't think we're going to survive as a nation because we're culturally too different. We don't have a unified culture. And I think ultimately losing the gun thing to me is just a symptom of that. What do you think?
Oh, that's super cool. I don't know. I would say, let's look back in history, right, and see, but that doesn't matter because in history it would have been a whole different set of people with a different life, right? So I like to think that I hear what you're saying a lot, but my first reaction is that there's a massive gun culture, right? Like I'm swimming in it. So it's changed and it adapts, and I don't know if it's bigger or smaller, but it's certainly different than it's ever been. But man, I could see it being, you know, just again, I really dig what you're saying there. Like, it's because I'm sure most people in other countries are gonna put firearms somewhere in their top 10, if not top 5 or 3 characteristics or things make a gun, or I mean, make an American, because that's sort of one of those stereotype perceptions, right? But man, I don't know. I don't know, because the thing is, people are coming from other cultures where they either had them and it was just the bad guys. So think about like all the other waves of immigration that have come in. Have they all had guns? They pretty much all had guns. I don't know how prevalent guns were, but they all had bullies with weapons. And as soon as they were able to arm up, they no longer had bullies when they got to here, right? Like I'm pretty much sure of every wave of immigration from every direction, because we've had them, you know, all over the place over the years for different reasons. When people get here, especially if they came meaning something, they get here and they resist bullies, except for in New York City, where the bullies since 1911 have been basically kind of, and I don't want to get into all that, but basically gun laws, changed the dynamic there. You couldn't defend against some of the bullies. That organized crime and stuff got even worse a couple of years later. But aside from that, I think that's an element, and I would like to think that the people who are coming from like drug countries down south, or where else are people coming from, like the Middle East, like they're familiar with guns. I'd give anybody, I mean, without, whoever we're going to call a terrorist one way or the other, somebody who's not radical, right? I'm comfortable with anybody from the Middle East having a gun. I mean, think about, of all the places on the planet, maybe Africa, some places in like warring Africa, those people are going to be completely comfortable with guns. So yeah, why not give them guns when they come over? They're not going to tolerate abuse, like.
Yeah. I get that. I'm liking the vibe.
No, it's a great topic.
Yeah, I'm liking the vibe of that. The considerations, that Rob was initiating there, and the ones that you just tail-ended with that. The normalization of firearms it didn't used to be a thing, and now it's a thing. I understand some of the historical movements and precedents and apathy that comes with that. But there was a time, and everyone understands, most everyone understands, and certainly could be, helped to do so, that firearms are just not the thing that they have become when it comes to fear, when it comes to danger. It used to be antithetical to those two things. And so with your example, say, of, people rolling in from other countries where firearms exist, where they're used to seeing people walking around with, catch this, automatic rifles, that people are, wearing something on their hip, that it is something that's an everyday deal. We lost the normalization. We have to now re-normalize firearms in our culture. Not digging it.
Well, I think where you start is is marksmanship. I mean, you go back 50, 60, 70 years, at least, when my dad was a kid, they had a gun range under the gym. And it was not uncommon to take a 22 rifle on the school bus to class, kind of thing, because it was important. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. If the government wanted to normalize this, and we don't have Republicans that are any really much better than Democrats on this issue, in my opinion, for the most part. But what you could do is, I like the idea of the Appleseed organization, where they do a 2-day course and they take someone, and I don't know if you know about Project Appleseed, but it's run by basically volunteers, nationwide organization, and they take people that have never shot before and teach them a Revolutionary War history on the breaks, and they teach people from positions, sling use, zeroing a rifle, to going from zero to literally shooting groups within a 2-day period of time. And it's just old school military marksmanship, essentially. And they do they use an old Army qualification set of targets for this thing, and it's really a lot of fun. And I've done it a few times, and it would be interesting to me if an organization like that could get well funded, or the government got behind it and really just start from the time kids are little, really trying to bring back this national heritage of shooting as a pastime. Baseball is not the pastime, or it used to be baseball was the national pastime. Really, marksmanship should have been, and probably really was, the national pastime. And I think we should go back to that. And it really, this should almost be a part of government. Government should be advocating this. I used to live in Ireland, and in Ireland they have what they call the Gaelic games. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Gaelic game, but it's a couple different sports, but one of them's hurling. And what they'll do is they have county-wide teams. So in Ireland, there's 32 counties, including the Northern Ireland, 6 counties. And every county has a county club. And they literally, compete county against county until they find out who the national champion is. And it's like a big deal in Ireland, especially rural Ireland. It's a really big deal. And it seems to me like, you had that strong, you used to have that marksmanship thing used to be a really big deal in Switzerland. It used to be a really big deal in Finland prior to World War II. It's where you got Simo Heha, which was like the white ghost sniper. And I really think that we should be trying to create that organization in the United States where it's like there's a national shooting competition. Like everybody gets a day off of work to go to it. Everybody's got it in their city or county or what have you. And, marksmanship and hunter safeties, taught every year as part of like gym class. And it has a couple different things. One, you're going to have a couple different benefits. One, you're going to have one of the most well-trained populaces in the world. No one's ever going to invade you. Let's start with there, right? And then two, you start unifying people around this cultural thing. Because if you think about it, there's nothing else we do as a people that everyone does. Inner city people on Indian reservations, people in rural locations, we all can't just point to one thing we all do as Americans other than pay taxes and fight. Right? And so this could be one of those things where everybody goes through this, whether you're in a city, whether you're in the country, wherever you are, you go through this kind of program and you participate. And that is how you unite a country, and you really kind of help grow and expand the culture. The other benefit would be you'd have fewer people getting shot accidentally, right? Because everybody will learn and have grilled into them gun safety from the time they're a little kid.
Well, it's not like gun safety is a test you have to take. It's just really awareness, right? And it's pretty simple,
right.
Just sort of like a drill or something, or like a stove. And if you've never touched one before, or like one of those glass stoves, like if you've never seen one of them before, but once you know what a stove is, you'd be like, hey, wait a minute, this looks like 99% like a rec stove. This looks like a stove. I suspect that's a burner, right? Like that's all it is for gun safety. It's just knowing some general stuff, like don't pick it up and play like a movie game.
But I've seen what people do in 2 days of an apple seed as far as muzzle discipline, trigger discipline.
Oh, yeah. Go from like 0 to just 100% awareness and ability to perform. Because it's not like it's rockets. It's just the basic stuff. That's all I'm getting at. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So to me, I think if we want to fix gun rights in this country, it's not about normalizing. Because it sounds almost like some kind of like conditioning thing. I think you don't have to normalize it. I think you need to change the culture back. And that's going to take a concerted effort to do it. But I think that's how you do it. I mean, remember, it's like, what good is a law if nobody enforces it, if nobody complies? Right? I mean, let's look at mask mandates, right? I can tell you in the United States, in most places where they had mask mandates, nobody enforced it. I mean, it just didn't really happen in a lot of places. And, Canada and Australia, they had a lot more enforcement because it was largely popular. So the government enforced it. Here, it was half the people didn't give a shit. And a lot of the cops didn't give a shit. So at least in red states, a lot of these rules largely about mask mandates and laws. I know we bitch about COVID, and I'm not trying to open up a Pandora's box about it. But the fact is, if you don't have agreement with the majority of people, it's really hard for government to enforce a rule or a law. And so if you have a strong culture that believes basically if most of the people have strong beliefs on marksmanship and, being a participant in some kind of patriotic shooting sport every year, you're not going to have politicians even float the idea of trying to limit or curtail that. So
that's the prevention, right? It's like you don't have to worry about what pill solves something if you live a lifestyle that you don't get the disease in the first place.
Exactly.
I don't know if I cut you off there, but yeah, I agree 100% again. I think that's not too far without out of realm or possibility any either, because as you were saying that, I'm sitting here thinking about, the gun culture community, whatever you want to call us right now. I guess community in this case, like the human beings that make up the people who own guns in the United States. as of 2022. It's a whole bunch of new gun owners and gun owners who are jumping back into it from some other place. So when, that could be anywhere, giant spectrum of people who've had a lot of guns, a lot of time on the clock, or few guns, whatever, lots of spectrum there. As people come together, as people get back into an awareness and comfortability, whatever, like you want to call it, like they pay attention to their guns again, one of the first things you're going to do, I think, is look around, and everybody looks around on the internet today. So as people look around and see that whatever, either they're coming at it and they've never been here before and they're seeing everything for the first time, or they're coming back at it and going, whoa, seeing all these new options and new things and things that have been going, and things that, I guess some things have ended, but if something they're looking for is ended, they're going to look around and see new things. So, I'm saying, there's just a lot of potential to see a lot of mixing. And I think the potential for something, I don't know if it's unique to the United States, but at least we have the ability to pursue it here, is whenever we get a bunch of people that are into something, we compete, right? I mean, not necessarily crazy, but if it's cars or boats or golf or whatever, like we compete. So it's now that there's a whole bunch of new gun owners, or people coming back to guns, or there's people that are like, yeah, I'm a gun owner, but wait, what are they doing now? Okay, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, they're casual gun owners, but they're going to jump, they're going to turn up the volume as soon as there's something interesting and new. I think there's a potential for that. And like you say, there's Appleseed, and I forget the name of the other one. There's another one that they weren't satisfied with Appleseed and made another one, like John. Oh man, I forget what the name of it is. I can look it up. It's on a minute now. But those are kind of focused on youth, and from what I understand, like 50% education, 50% gun stuff. So you're learning some American history at the same time you're learning marksmanship and why you learn marksmanship, not just marksmanship, and again, some common knowledge kind of thing. And you would only have to either change that, refocus it, or throw another one down similar, right? But that's kind of what you're talking about, is, I would think, unless you're talking about something even more official, sort of like what they did in 1903 with the Militia Act of 1903, which kind of created all the state gun clubs. Maybe throw a bunch of money at the gun clubs to become gun clubs again, and not just pro rights organizations, but like literally sponsor matches and create things that, like you just said, everything you just explained, let people start shooting county to county, state level, and states.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think you got to get the government behind it, like in red states, at least. That'd be a place to start. But I think that's the thing. And I do have to jet in a few minutes. But I would, like, I'll give a great example. I have a friend of mine that lives in New Jersey, basically born and raised New Yorker, lives in Jersey, works in New York, and comes out to where I live in Utah. And, obviously in those two states, if you're born and raised there, guns are like very rare, right? They're very heavily regulated and limited. And in fact, even in New York City, BB guns are treated like firearms, like they're the way they're prohibited. And so I picked it. He was in town for business. I just put a bunch of guns in my truck, picked him up from his fancy hotel. Like, we're going to go shooting. And I took him out to the desert, and dude, he had the biggest blast. And I just brought a bunch of guns that he could shoot that were like something he could never, ever shoot in those states. Right. And it was interesting. But it also was very sad. And it was sad for the fact that he's an American, but shooting these guns are completely off limits to him in his home state. And I thought it was kind of sad when I thought about it. I mean, we had a good time, but I'm like, it was such a new experience. It was like he went to a foreign country on vacation. Right. And that's what I thought was interesting. And it really made me think like this. And by the way, none of the guns were exotics. I don't have any like full autos or anything like that. It was just normal, like AR-15s kind of stuff. And he was just like, wow, this is so cool. I'd never be able to do this back home, blah, And I mean, that's what we need to stop. We need to fix that. And I don't know a good way to do it, but I do see that as a really, really big problem. But because I have to literally leave my house So I appreciate the time on stage on the stream, and I appreciate talking to you guys, and I love hearing you guys do this stuff and talk about this stuff, and I really appreciate you guys.
Right on. Yeah, thanks for jumping in. Great points.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'll catch you later.
Go easy.
All right, well, we've been going for 90. I think if anybody was going to jump in, they probably would have in the first hour or so. So we could get towards wrapping it up here. Don't have to prove nothing. Just want to make an opportunity to talk about what our Second Amendment protects once a month. And we'll do that on the 2nd because it's easy to remember. But anything that Rob brought up there or that we've been chatting about that's or that you heard over on Brooks' thing, I didn't really listen to Brooks' thing as much as just give it a thumbs up and say, hey, she was talking about how she's going to be talking to the Connecticut governor. Or no, she is talking about Connecticut governor's bill. What the hell's a governor's bill? An act addressing gun violence and juvenile crime, and how the name is for the headlines, not what's in it. Did you listen to that at all?
Unable to do so. Looking forward to catching it later, though.
She had a link in here. Brooke had a link to, I guess this is something that the governor came up with. Thought it was a great idea to introduce legislation somehow as the executive branch. I can't imagine how that works. But there must be some system for that to happen. Unless it's a bill that's going to the governor. Maybe that's what that means. I'll bet you that's what it means. But in any case, she's live, and then Barbecue is doing his 2A Women Wednesday, where he interviews ladies who are in the 2A arena, community, culture, whatever you want to call us.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. He's doing Boomstick Babe today, I believe.
Well, he has her on as a guest today, that's for sure. And, yep, that's happening at the moment. Simultaneously, I'm corking them because I did lay down this show on top of his show because he normally goes live on Wednesdays. But, I try to lay this thing down where people might join in. And it's one of the things I thought was cool. Not everybody thought this was cool, but I thought it was neat about doing the show on the 2nd of every month means that it's never on the same day. It won't be on the same day of the week. And, it doesn't always lie on a weekday or weekend. So I thought that was good, better, because then it allows for more variety and more opportunity. And one of my problems back in the day, and still I don't prefer this, is when you get a group of people, let's say 10 to 12 people. Back in the day, we could hold, I think, 10 people in the chat. So let's say 10 people. I can't remember if it was 10 or 12. But anyway, there's a group of people, and let's say 8 of them are the same people all the time. Because then there's not really a lot of change in discussion very much. And, it can be interesting, especially as viewers, because viewers can be anything from a moment or two to a long time. So, you got a bunch of people and they just talk about the same thing, then it becomes pretty routine. Is that the word? Like you pretty much know what everybody's going to say on stuff. So the idea of having it be a show that happens kind of randomly throughout schedules of different people's schedules gave different people the opportunity to jump in. Sort of like how Foss was able to jump onto Barbecue's daytime version of his show today, where he normally isn't able to jump onto his nighttime evening shows.
A variety of opportunities certainly encourages people to participate. Right on.
Potentially, yeah. It gives them the opportunity at least. With that, though, we're going to wrap it up, I guess. So thanks, everybody who did show up live, and anybody who shows up after. The idea here, again, is to chat about what our Second Amendment protects, not necessarily in any particular way other than the time we do it. But as far as the experience itself, definitely enjoying the ride as far as the development of the conversation and the avenues available to us. It's frustrating sometimes trying to cater to everyone's interests out there, but when you're just exploring and your goal isn't to make a buck off of however many people show up for the feast. You're going to have interesting tastes, and you're going to find licorice every once in a while, right? Something gross. So it's been pretty fun. We haven't had much licorice along the way at all. It's been a lot of curries and new kind of chips and pickled dishes, and then finding new desserts and things made with honey and nuts that you would have never thought could be that texture or whatever. So it's been pretty pleasant, and hopefully people are enjoying the ride as well. And I guess we'll be back next week or next month. Anything else to close with? I've been blabbing there.
Be safe, have fun, and pay attention to your legislation. Keep active, stay active, encourage others, and awareness, big time, and always rock.
Right on. So thanks again, everybody. We'll get back to pick you up later.